Week 1 of the NFL regular season is officially over. Week 2 has begun, and what a wild one it was. The Buffalo Bills coming from behind, beating the Baltimore Ravens, Micah Parsons' debut, and the Eagles getting a huge win over the Cowboys. Hello, everybody. I'm Noah Clark. This is Snap the Pigskin. We've got some great stuff for you today. We're going to recap all of week 1 with our first drive of the week here. We're also going to break down our first Bring Home the Bacon and our Pigskin prime time picks. And if you're listening to this episode, we drop episodes usually every Wednesday, so feel free to drop by our channel, give a like, and subscribe to the channel. Let's start with our drive of the week. Let's start with last night's game, or Monday night's game, the Chicago Bears against the Minnesota Vikings. Chicago and Caleb Williams, second year in the league, second year with the Chicago Bears, first year under Ben Johnson. Did not look like it was a good start for Caleb Williams in the second half. The first half was a different story. The first half, very phenomenal start for the Chicago Bears, got out to a nice little lead, a pick six from the Chicago Bears, Nashawn Wright, to give Chicago a nice little cushion. And things were looking all gloomy. Looking actually on the opposite of gloomy, looking all amazing until the second half and that fourth quarter. Minnesota coming from behind and winning yet again under Kevin O'Connell, and the Vikings win on Monday Night Football. They go to 1-0 on the season, and they are 1-0 in divisional play in the NFC North. Keep in mind, too, the NFC North, only division that had everybody in their division playing week one. Not every team played in their division. So really, this was kind of a, first, at least for week 1. The division is already looking pretty good. The NFC North is already looking pretty good. The Vikings look like a scary team. Detroit looks like they kind of took a step back. Green Bay looks amazing, but we'll get into that later on here during our show. Looking at the Chicago Bears game, though, the Bears struggled yet again. And this was another thing that kind of what we've seen in the past as Bears fans have watched, and as just a regular NFL watcher, Chicago struggled yet again. This was a team last year that under Matt Eberflus and under Thomas Brown, the interim head coach, struggled and didn't play particularly that well and lost a lot of games that they shouldn't have lost, or were up in some games and evidently, in the end, lost. And I think that this is a thing, too, that now is happening with Ben Johnson. Here we are now with Ben Johnson. We're going through this cycle with a third head coach now, where Ben Johnson comes in and he doesn't like the quarterback, and now it's become an issue. I mean, Caleb Williams, too, was missing some wide open throws. The one to DJ Moore that he was running, I believe it was a wheel route, wide open, and Caleb Williams airmailed him. I don't want to say yet that Caleb Williams is considered a quote-unquote bust, but we're getting to that point with Caleb Williams now where he hasn't looked really good in Ben Johnson's system. He just hasn't. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. So now it's just kind of, well, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do with this? What happens from here? Apparently, a lot of Bears fans thought that Caleb Williams had a great performance. I didn't think he did in the second half. They really struggled moving the ball, especially on third down. That's a money down. You have to convert that. And they didn't. And they lost this game. It just really sucks, for Bears fans that that they have to go through this again with another head coach where managing the game isn't really key. And speaking of managing, like another thing too. Under the 2-minute warning, they are right at the edge of the 2-minute warning, and they don't kick the ball out of bounds. I understand, yeah, you get the ball, you give Minnesota the ball at the 40, but it's at that point, what is it? It's a 3-point game. Like, it's a 3-point game. You could easily give them an opportunity to, yeah, maybe kick 3 points. But you would have had the 2-minute warning, and you had a timeout in your pocket. And Ben Johnson, what does he do? Kicks it straight to Ty Chandler and runs out the clock to get it down to the 2-minute warning. It's not good game management. It's not good game management. Now, I've said a lot about the Bears. I've said a lot about what Chicago is, and I want to leave with this one more thing about the Chicago Bears, because Chicago and Caleb Williams, this is a stat that is very interesting. This is the interesting stat of this for first down. Caleb Williams, since being drafted in 2024, he has not won a game against any of his draft classmates in the 2024 NFL draft. He lost last year to Jaden Daniels. He lost last year to Drake May. And he lost to J.J. McCarthy now on Monday Night Football. And it's not easy. So he's 0-3, 0-4 as the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Now, on the other side, I'm going to jump now to the Minnesota Vikings, because Minnesota is not getting off the hook for this game either. J.J. McCarthy, and let me start there, did not look impressive. He did not look impressive in this game. He looked really, for 3/4 of this game, not really good until that fourth quarter hit. And when that fourth quarter hit, it really was everybody, it really was on everybody's minds of, man, how about J.J. McCarthy? How about J.J. McCarthy coming out in this fourth quarter and, dicing up the Bears? Which in any situation, yeah, it's the Bears. They're always going to Bears. They're going to do what they're going to do. But in this game, Chicago had the advantage. They were killing the Vikings for 3 quarters straight, and they played around with their food too long. And you know what happens when you play around with your food too long? It can get cold. The Vikings, or particularly in this case, the Bears got cold. And it led to Minnesota coming back. And just let me tell you about the stats with J.J. McCarthy in this game. He was unimpressive. And I say this, everybody wants to look back at, well, he had a great fourth quarter. He got the team the win. He threw, 2 passing touch. He threw really well in that fourth quarter. The game management was really well done by Kevin O'Connell. And I'll get to Kevin O'Connell in a bit, because I've had this thought about Kevin O'Connell in recent years. But J.J. McCarthy, let me just show you the stats from what he did, which is unimpressive. 143. He was 13 for 20. He had 143 for passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also had a rushing touchdown in this game as well. And it's unimpressive. It's unimpressive. Against any other team with that stat line, that is not really a good stat. And it's the Bears. This is a good stat, and I'm sorry, Bears fans, I got to rip on you. I mean, you guys aren't that good, but, the fact that J.J. McCarthy was able to pull off this win was, honestly, in my opinion, nothing short of amazing, because the way that this game played out, and the stats show it too. 13 for 20 really wasn't impressive. 143, 2 touchdowns. He threw a pick. That was a pick 6. It wasn't really an impressive performance by J.J. McCarthy. And yet we kind of brushed that aside to the fourth quarter that he had. I mean, are we being for real about this right now? Are we not sitting here and saying that he may not be a good quarterback? Like, are we sitting here and really saying, man, how about the Minnesota Vikings? They came out slinging in this game. That was not the case. It was not the case at all. And now on to Kevin O'Connell. And let me talk about Kevin O'Connell, because I've harped on J.J. McCarthy, but Kevin O'Connell is also one to blame for this, because he did have a good fourth quarter and he called a really good fourth quarter, but leading up to that, they weren't doing anything. His play calling was horrible. The execution was horrible from his players. And somehow they end up, under Kevin O'Connell, winning it again. And I just keep bringing this up. I keep saying this because I say this every time. Minnesota cannot continuously keep getting away with these wins. There's just no way. But Kevin O'Connell finds a way to do it. And I've said this too. But I just don't think he's that good of a coach. I frankly don't think he's that good of a coach. Let me just pull up some of these stats here. And everybody thinks, yeah, like these stats aren't that good. You know, these stats are, you're kind of making this seem like, oh, you're hitting all the wrong spots. You're not right about Kevin O'Connell. I mean, when I give you these stats, you tell me, you tell me what you see from this. Just not even as a Vikings fan, but as an NFL fan, and what you think this is. So Kevin O'Connell, since he came into the league in 2022, he has won before Monday night. He has a record of 33-13 in one-score games decided by 8 points or fewer. Since he came into the league as the head coach for the Minnesota Vikings, he's won 33 games with 8 points or fewer. 13 of those were losses. He's coached 46 games, make it 47 now, and he's 34-47. 34-13 in one-score games with 8 points or less. Okay? He has the most. That is the most by any coach right now. That is the most by any coach. It baffles me. It baffles me. On top of that, too, he won Coach of the Year last year, yes, but he's not won a playoff game. He's lost 2 playoff games. He's lost two playoff games, and these were both really bad playoff game losses. Loses to the Daniel Jones, Brian Dable-led Giants, and he loses to Matthew Stafford and the Rams. And it was an ugly game, and he got blown out by the LA Rams. Wasn't even close. And wasn't even in LA. I just don't think he's a good coach, man. I don't think he's a good coach. Everybody says he is. I don't think he is. When you look at these numbers, you would think at some point a coach has to change, and has to change the way that they're calling plays, because you can't. 34 one-score games is unheard of for a head coach in his tenure. 34, one-score games. You should not be in 34 one-score games. You should find ways to beat your opponent, especially last night, the Bears, the way that they were playing, and the way Minnesota's team is built, they should have absolutely mopped the floor with them. And they didn't. And that's going to be the telltale for this team this season. Is this team a potential fraud? Because I've said it last year. I said it in 2022. I thought the Minnesota Vikings were frauds. And even in 2023, when they had Kirk Cousins go down, I thought, yeah, maybe there's something there. I honestly, they missed the playoffs. Kevin O'Connell missed the playoffs when he didn't have, his star quarterback. And now he doesn't even have a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. I mean, come on. 20 passes in an NFL game. You expect me to believe 20 passes in an NFL game is going to win, is going to get your team to the postseason. Okay. So that's my rant on that. But we'll see where both of these teams head. They, division games don't start for a long, long time, I believe, at least for Green Bay and Detroit. These two teams don't meet again, and we'll talk later about that. But moving forward, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. Now on to second down. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Holy cow. What an incredible game. This may have been one of the more underrated games of the weekend, but I think it was a pretty good game to watch if you were a Jets fan or if you were a Steelers fan. Aaron Rodgers' farewell tour began on Sunday, and it started off with a vintage Aaron Rodgers performance. 4 touchdowns, 200 plus passing yards, completed at least above 70% of his passes, and got the win. And on top of that, on the other side too, Justin Fields had himself quite the game. And my former co-host on this show, Kedrick Stumbris, would have words to say about Justin Fields and what he is as a quarterback. But this was a fun game. If you were a casual NFL watching fan and you're just you want to watch a good football game, this was a good football game. This was really a fun one to watch. Aaron Rodgers played really well, and they got the win. On top of that, too, a little bit of added extra flair in the press conference when Aaron Rodgers said, when someone asked him, how did it feel beating the Jets? And his response was, he's very happy that he beat everyone associated with the New York Jets because in an earlier interview with Pat McAfee, he came, on the show and told about how Aaron Glenn basically had him fly from wherever he was at to New York just to tell him they're going in another direction. And Aaron Glenn's team got smacked by the Jets. They lost to the Jets. Or not lost to the Jets. He's on the Jets. They lost to the Steelers. So, ideally, doesn't look too good. It doesn't look good for the New York Jets to start, a loss. But for the Steelers, man, how about that offense? How about Pittsburgh, man? The terrible towels being thrown out there. Aaron Rodgers slinging the rock like he's prime Aaron Rodgers. 4 tutties, 4 touchdowns in this game. It was really impressive what Aaron Rodgers was doing. And with Arthur Smith as the OC, it was also really impressive. I really, truly think after 1 week, 1 performance, this is going to be a team that's going to be tough to beat in the AFC North. Just simply because they got the quarterback, they got the offensive coordinator to lead this team, and they look both really impressive. The play calling was impressive. Aaron Rodgers' decision-making and his throws were impressive. Some throws that he made looked like the vintage Aaron Rodgers that everybody is all used to seeing. And so I tip my cap to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is going to be a fun one. And congratulations for Aaron Rodgers. Now, for the New York Jets, same old Jets. They lose this game. Justin Fields, however, I thought played a decent game. I thought he did well. I thought Justin Fields played well. Whether or not Jets fans think that, I mean, you be the judge because you look at the stats. I mean, 2 for 18, 16 for 22, 1 touchdown. He also did have a rushing touchdown in this game. And in the third, he didn't have a rushing touchdown. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. So he had really kind of a good performance. And I question, maybe this is the guy the Jets have been looking for. I mean, who knows? Justin Fields has been kind of bounced around. I mean, he was with the Bears, then last year he was with the Steelers. He got benched for Russell Wilson, even though Justin Fields did particularly play pretty well for Pittsburgh. And then after that, now he ends up on the Jets. He's the starting quarterback, and he did a pretty good job for New York. I really think that, if the Jets are going to go far, he's going to be the key to getting them that far. Is he going to be the future for the New York Jets? We'll find out. We'll find out after the season. But he played really well against a very good Steelers defense. And that is what's really impressive to me is the New York Jets, they've been waiting. They've been salivating for a starting quarterback to come in and lift this franchise up from the ashes and lift this franchise up to new heights to where they are a contender. They haven't had a starting quarterback that has won him a Super Bowl since Joe Namath back in 1968. Like, this team has been salivating, drooling. They've been drooling. They've been just, they're biting at the bit to try and get back to relevancy that they had in the 60s. And they haven't had it. Well, maybe they have it in Justin Fields. Maybe they do. We'll see. We will definitely see. Third down now. We're moving through these pretty quickly, but third down. I'm talking a little bit more about this. Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers dominating the Detroit Lions at Lambeau Field in week 1. How impressive of a game that was for my Packers. Quite impressive. Quite impressive, especially with the new car that they got in the garage over there in Micah Parsons. He absolutely was outstanding. And it began with a really dominating win for the Detroit Lions, for the Green Bay Packers. Came out against the defending back-to-back division champs, the Detroit Lions, and they smacked them. Final score of this game, 27-13. Was not even close. Not even close. Micah Parsons, first game, he was all over the field. Jeff Hafley and that staff, they utilized him well to get him in places where he could really cause some pressure. Then on the offensive side, Jordan Love played really well and was delivering. And I'll get into the stats here about these two because there's some good stats there. Detroit with Jared Goff has not particularly been that good without Ben Johnson or Sean McVay. And a stat that I found out there about Jared Goff was Jared Goff, apparently, he's had 5 different play callers in his career. And there's been 3 to, Ben Johnson, Sean McVay. He is 0-19-1. Without Sean McVay or Ben Johnson, he's 0-19-1. Now let that sink in a bit. I've said this too about Jared Goff. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think last year he had a really good season because his stats were really loaded because he did a lot of checkdowns, a lot of, underneath routes. You look also too, the run game was a big focus with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And it just to me didn't seem like he was that good of a quarterback. And looking at the divisional playoff game, they lost the Commanders. I mean, they got bounced. And this was the case again here against this Packers team. He did not play well. He threw a pick. He threw a pick. He got sacked multiple times. He did not look good. A lot of the times, looking for the check down. They had long drives and they only could muster up 13 points. Mind you, long drives where he's taking the check down. And it was, and I've said this before about Brock Purdy, Brock Purdy's the same way because Brock Purdy doesn't take a lot of deep shots. He goes more for the check down to try and pad those numbers, get those numbers statistically up. It's the same thing with Jared Goff. Jared Goff does the same thing where he looks for the check down to try and pad those stats. Doesn't really take many deep shots when needed. And I just think too, I just don't think that he's that good. Now, for the Green Bay Packers, and I got a lot to say about Green Bay, I thought that this was a phenomenal performance. The addition of Micah Parsons, I talked about this last week on our show, boosted them into where they could be the number 2 seed in the NFC playoff picture. I don't think they're going to be quite the 1 seed. I think the Eagles may have the slight advantage. And the only reason I think the Eagles may have the slight advantage is because the Eagles play Green Bay in the regular season, and I think Philadelphia is going to steal that game in Green Bay. I do, however, think that Green Bay will make it to the Super Bowl because of this Micah Parsons deal and how big of a deal it was. Green Bay the whole offseason really didn't address the pass rushing need. They drafted Baron Sorrell. That was pretty much it. They didn't sign anybody in free agency. They, for pass rushing help. They signed Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs to corners, to a corner and a lineman. They went out in the draft. They did get Matthew Golden, but they didn't get that pass rusher. And this was the issue that killed Green Bay last year was their pass rushing. They struggled with just a 4-man pass rush, a standard 4-man pass rush. They couldn't get after anybody. And now you look, they came out and they gave the Lions a big old can of whoop ass. Big old can, not diet either. And it was very impressive what they did on the defensive side. And before I even get, into the offensive side, let me just pull up these stats here for you for why this was so good for the defense. You look at Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons had such a big impact for this team. The Packers' pressure rate was a lot better in the matchup with Detroit in this game than it was in the 2 games they played the Lions last year. On top of that, just from Micah Parsons had a 21% pass rush win rate. Do you know who he was lining up against? Penei Sewell, the 2-time All-Pro Pro Bowler left tackle. And that's pretty dang good. I mean, keep in mind, Micah Parsons has played Lane Johnson. He's had Lane Johnson in his career, and Jordan Mailata in his career. He's had to deal with those guys. He's used to dealing with a guy like Penei Sewell. And it just is really impressive when you look at that stat, 21% against Penei Sewell. I mean, that's really good. I mean, that's really good. That's what you want from your guy to be causing pressure. On top of that, too, Micah Parsons had a sack in this game. He got his first sack, and which was, by the way, so amazing when he came out of there and all you just see him is rush down and get Jared Goff for the sack. That was incredible. Incredible stuff from Micah Parsons. And the defense got a turnover. They held the Lions to basically, if you discount the Isaac Tesla touchdown, they basically held them to 6 points, which was 2 field goals. They did not give up a touchdown the entire game. But because of the touchdown, we have to count it. We have to count it. The defense played well. They came out, they played well. They showed right off the bat with Jeff Hafley, this defense is for real. And don't be surprised, Packers fans, if Jeff Hafley is up for some head coaching considerations next year, and Packer fans are going to be looking for a new defensive coordinator, which is wild to think about, given the fact that they have just had a horrendous run on defensive coordinators over the past 2 decades. I mean, they've had Mike Pettin, Dom Capers, and Joe Barry as their defensive coordinators, and it's not looked good. It's not looked good, and Jeff Hafley is the first one. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Now, looking on the offensive side of the ball for Green Bay. Looking on the offensive side of the ball for Green Bay, I thought that this offense looked way, 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 way better than what they did a year ago. A year ago, down the stretch in December, they were killing teams because their schedule was really easy. Now, going to next year, you got Matthew Golden. How is Matthew Golden going to fare? You got Aaron Banks now to add to that O-line. How is that O-line going to fare? Pretty good. I mean, Aaron, like you look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love had, the most Jordan Love had to hold the ball. His drop back time was almost 10 seconds. He had a long time to hold the ball and find somebody. And that's really impressive. And pulling up and looking at another one of these stats here on top of that, and let me just show you why a lot of people keep disrespecting Jordan Love. I think people keep disrespecting Jordan Love. I've said this. I know Packer fans have said this, but he looks like a prime candidate to be the MVP. And look at these numbers. You thought Jared Goff's numbers were inflated. Were inflated. I mean, Jordan Love's numbers aren't inflated. They're just better. They're just better. 2 first half touchdowns to start this game. Jordan Love also had, by Pro Football Focus, they ranked him as the number 1 quarterback in terms of big time throw rate. 17.4% from Jordan Love. He also, before Monday night, was number 2 in EPA dropback rate during week 1. Lamar Jackson had more dropbacks than Jordan Love. He's the only other quarterback. And Jordan Love finished with a passer rating of 128.6. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. If you're second in EPA and dropback rate, that's pretty dang good. And they need to keep that going. They need to keep that going. You got Thursday Night Football against the Commanders. Got to play well. Got to play well in that game. And we'll talk more about that, and I'll break it down to my pigskin picks here. But really impressive stuff. And one last thing before we get to our 4th down here. Green Bay tied an NFL record also with this win. With this win against the Detroit Lions, they have won now a consecutive 13 straight home openers. From 2013 to 2025, they have not lost a home opener. Not lost a home opener. The only team that has more wins, I shouldn't say more wins, the only team that, that they're up there with, the 76-88 Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins have 13. They tied Miami with 13 consecutive home opener wins. Miami won from 76 to 88 in the Don Shula years. Impressive stuff. And we are 1 week in. Still got a whole lot of game left. Whole lot of regular season left. But so far, Green Bay looks really impressive. Now, I will say Green Bay does look impressive, but not as impressive as what the Buffalo Bills did on Monday Night Football. And this is our 4th down here on this show, and we're getting close to bringing home the bacon. Who had the best week? Josh Allen on 4th down here for the Bills. What a phenomenal game. First of all, let's start there. What a phenomenal game by both of these teams. Bills, Ravens. I mean, we go back to the playoff game back in January and how incredible of a playoff game that was. And fast forward into September now, what an incredible game this was. The Ravens losing to the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. Josh Allen coming from behind a 15-point comeback to stun the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. What a game this was from start to finish, and it came into more of the Ravens play with Baltimore having Derrick Henry go off. Derrick Henry ran for 169 and 2 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 9.4 yards per carry in this game against the Ravens. On top of that, too, in this game, sorry, not against the Ravens, against the Bills. In this game also, too, Lamar Jackson had 4 touchdowns, 2 in the air and 1 on the ground. So he had 3, actually, excuse me. That's the other guy that we're going to talk about. It looked like it was all impossible. And then out of nowhere, Josh Allen dicing up the Ravens, slicing, dicing. One, to start the season off in Highmark Stadium, the last year there at Highmark Stadium. He played phenomenal in that fourth quarter, in those last 4 minutes of that game. Last 4 minutes, 15-point comeback. And they end up winning that game. And the turning point of that game was Derrick Henry's fumble. If Derrick Henry's fumble does not happen, that game kind of ends. I don't think we see that comeback. And because of Derrick Henry's fumble, the Buffalo Bills got the win. They go to 1-0 in the season. And what a massive 1-0 that is to start. You get ahead of the Ravens and ahead of the Chiefs, which is very impressive. Very, 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 very impressive. For Buffalo, man, this was, I will say this, it did not look good from the start. Josh Allen did not look good to start. I mean, they played well up until, the wheels came off the wagon for the Bills. And they ended up, struggling. I think Josh Allen threw a pick in this game too as well. Baltimore capitalized on a couple drives where the Bills didn't get any points. The Ravens did. So really just, it's tough. It was tough, not looking good for Buffalo, but they got the win. And I said this again, going back into our show last week, when you have Josh Allen, anything is possible. When you have Josh Allen, anything is possible for the Buffalo Bills. They come back from 15 points and they win the game against the Ravens. Now, on the other side of it, Baltimore Ravens put themselves with this loss in some rare territory. Not very good stuff here. And let me put this up here for the Ravens. Let me tell you about this stat. The Ravens become the first team in NFL history to score 40-plus points, rush for 35-plus rushing yards, and lose. Coming into this game, teams were 277-0. 277-0 when that stat was there. 40-plus points, you run for 235-plus rush yards. It never happened until now. 277-1. And on top of that, too, now, John Harbaugh, this is his 17th double-digit blown lead. The most by any head coach since 1991. Unbelievable. Unbelievable from John Harbaugh. I know we harp on Brandon Staley and Anthony Lynn, some of the Chargers coaches, because of how bad, their game management was. Particularly those two, because they were really bad game managers going into the fourth. But this is bad for John Harbaugh. I mean, 17 double-digit blown losses. Not a good number. Not a good stat to have. Baltimore's got to get it turned around. They got to. Got to get it turned around. This loss is tough because it could come down to, if the when we get into the playoff talk. And when we get into playoff talk when it gets to November and January. Or November and January, sorry. November, December. And those games really, really matter back in the season, back in week 1, in week 2, in week 3. Those games are going to matter so much. This game is a big one, and it comes in rare territory for records. Disappointing. Now, moving on back, bringing back the positivity. We get to bringing home the bacon. We're almost getting close to the end of our show here. We're going to talk bringing home the bacon. And our bringing home the bacon segment goes to the guy who was outstanding, who showed out, balled out, brought home the money, or in this case, the bacon on our show. And this guy killed it on Sunday Night Football. Josh Allen ran, with a phenomenal performance that, makes you say, man, Josh Allen be Josh Allen. And the stats show 33 for 46, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 15-point comeback win against the Baltimore Ravens. Mr. Josh Allen, congratulations, sir. You are on the slab of bacon once again. He's been a regular here on this show for us. Now, moving on, we jump into our Pigskin primetime picks. And hopefully you guys are keeping track of our Pigskin primetime picks. I have lost a lot of track here. I have lost track of who picked who, but we will, if you guys are listening and following along, you guys can keep track of the stuff. So let's get into it. Let's begin with our first one, Thursday Night Football, the first Thursday Night Football game of the year on Amazon Prime. Got a good one. The Washington Commanders go to Lambeau Field to play the Green Bay Packers. This is a whiteout game for Green Bay, so Green Bay will be wearing their white jerseys. Commanders will be wearing their home jerseys. And Green Bay coming off a massive monster win. One stat to look at here that could give me the decider is Brandon Sheriff. Or excuse me, not Brandon Sheriff. Brandon Coleman. Lowest graded offensive lineman in true pass sets in week 1. Man. So with that, because of that stat, I look at that. It's not hard for me to pick the Green Bay Packers. I mean, their defense dominated in week 1 against Jared Goff. Their defense is going to have to dominate again in week 2 against Jaden Daniels. I think they'll get it done. I think this game's going to be a lot closer, though. I think Jaden Daniels is going to make a lot more throws. He's going to have to make a lot more throws. How will he be able to handle Micah Parsons, and how will he be able to handle that Packer defense and that pass rush? Who knows? But I got Green Bay winning this one. I got Green Bay winning this one by 3 in this game. I see this being a relatively close game. The other thing, too, about Green Bay, it has been a very, very long time since they've won on Thursday Night Football. I think they've lost the last 3 now, last 2 or 3. They lost last year they lost the last 2 years to the Lions, and then they lost to the Titans under Aaron Rodgers. So particularly not been very good for Green Bay these last 3 Thursday Night Football games. This would be a good one to end that streak on. So I got Green Bay by 3. Now moving on to Sunday. Sunday Night Football. This is going to be an interesting game between two teams, two potential playoff teams. I have Atlanta as a potential playoff team here, and I have the Vikings as also a playoff team. First game at US Bank Stadium to start the season for the Minnesota Vikings. That place is going to be rocking. Atlanta coming off a tough loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, that was a team they swept in divisional play. This year, Tampa Bay gets the win off of a Younghoe Koo missed field goal. This is going to be fun. I got Minnesota winning this one. Last year, when Minnesota played Atlanta just was no match. And keep in mind, Kirk Cousins was the quarterback. So this is a different story now. You got Michael Penix Jr. I will say this game is going to be close. I think Minnesota is going to win this game by 3 as well. I think US Bank Stadium is such a hard place to play. Michael Penix has not played yet at US Bank Stadium in the primetime atmosphere because there's something about US Bank Stadium in primetime that just makes it a lot scarier. And I think he's going to be in for a treat. Not a good one. I got Vikings by 3 in this one over the Atlanta Falcons. Now, moving on to the Monday Night Football game. There's going to be 2 Monday Night Football games. There's a doubleheader. There's one starting at 6, and then there's one starting at 9. And this is the first one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Houston Texans, 2 playoff teams as well. Tampa Bay going to Houston. Houston's home opener against the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay with a big win over Atlanta. Won by 3 off a missed field goal. Houston recovering from a brutal loss in LA. They did not particularly play that well in LA. They did not play well. They need to get off the schneid. They need to bounce back. How will this game fare? For this one, though, I'm going to take the road team. I think Tampa Bay, with Baker Mayfield and company, they played really well in the game against Atlanta. They came up clutch at the end. And yeah, if it weren't for a Younghoe Koo missed field goal, maybe they win in overtime. But I got the Bucks going here in this game against the Texans. I also think, too, Houston's offense, they did not particularly play that well. They did not particularly play well against the Rams. They only scored 9 points. So I just don't know. I don't know how they can bounce back from that. So I got Tampa Bay winning this one on the road. And then the last one here, actually 2. I got Tampa Bay winning this one on the road, and by a shocker, I got them winning it by 7, not by 3. I got for the Chargers and the Raiders. This is the last one. This is a very late night one. Divisional matchup 2. Chargers and the Raiders. Honestly, give me Chargers by a billion. I got Chargers by 13 in this game. I think the Raiders, they played well. They played well against the Patriots. And they did get the win in New England, in Foxborough. But it was New England. New England's not that good of a team. Tom Brady's not on the other side. I have the Chargers winning this game. I think they really shocked a lot of people when they upset the Kansas City Chiefs in Brazil. And so I think I can see this trend getting continued here. And on top of that, too, going up 2-0 into the division is massive for you to start the season. So I got the Chargers winning this one at the Death Star, or as I like to call it too, the Roomba, because it looks like a Roomba. I have them winning this one by 13 out there in Las Vegas. And with that does it for us here on this show for week 2 of the NFL season. Watch Snap the Pigskin at youtube.com/snapthepigskin or listen wherever you get your podcasts. I'm still trying to figure out how to get our show back onto the podcast side of things, back to the audio podcast side of things. But if you want to listen to any of our previous episodes, find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and much more. And with that, that does it for us here on this show. I'm Noah Clark. We will see you all next week for week 3. Man, this season is going to be a fun one, and week 1 was already exciting. So with that does it for us here on another episode of Snap the Pigskin.